Hello, welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews. It's Gaming Friday. I'm Gary.
And I'm Dan.
Welcome back to Gaming Friday, Dan. And today we are taking a look at Divinity Original Sin 2, which is available on PC. It came out on the 14th of September 2017. Developed by Larian Studios, which is a Belgium development team with about 130 staff members. And this is the latest game in a long-running series of Divinity games. I and Nella, we both jumped in on Divinity Original Sin, which came out in 2014, which was the prequel to Divine Divinity, which was Larian Studios' first Divinity game, which was back in 2002. Since then, they've made, a series of games with Beyond Divinity in 2004, Divinity Dragon Commander, that was 2013. There was Divinity 2 in 2009, with The Flames of Vengeance in 2010, The Dragon King in 2011, before Divinity Original Sin 2014, and now this one. So there's quite a few games in that legacy of games. Now, when I jumped in on Divinity Original Sin 2014, I was like, this is something different. This is old school, pen and paper dungeon crawling, character building, storytelling.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, for me, it was such a departure from other games that I was playing that at first, like, all of my resisted barriers went up and went, this is just like retro, but it's not enough. Like, I need to see what else this game can offer. And so when I did my first video on Divinity, I upset quite a few Divinity players that were just like, go back to playing your arcade games and just like stay away from these sort of games. They're clearly not for you.
Well, I'd played one of the original Divinity games, and when you first brought this up to me, I was a little bit, well, I mean, I'll try it if that's what you want, but it's not what I think it is. But I was incredibly wrong for the first Divinity. It was a completely different beast.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was I guess it's departure. It's now the Original Sin instead of just Divinity anymore. It's Divinity, with its own spin-off series.
Set in the same world, but its own unique story, sort of.
Yeah, I believe this is centuries after the first Divinity game that this one takes place.
Right.
There are characters and story beats from the previous Divinity game that we see in this one, that echoes in this one.
Yeah, certainly.
So just going back to closing off, in my original review for Divinity Original Sin, I didn't praise it as much as I would have liked to have done. And that's because I hadn't played it as much, and since then I'd gotten to the very end of that game and unable to defeat the end boss because we were both playing it with mods, with sort of extreme encounters or rare encounters.
Yeah, it balanced a lot of the abilities, increased the amount of enemies, increased the difficulty, because the base game, once you sort of got a hang of it and learnt how to just crowd control the enemies, it became a little bit of a pushover. So we played a mod that balanced things out a little bit, stopped you from CCing every single turn. They could only last for a couple of turns and then went immune, and made it so the final boss encounter for us, we just weren't prepared for it.
No, well, we got absolutely hammered again and again and again. So yeah, we never beat the first game, but we got to the end boss, and I just considered that the ending. Actually, the dragon kind of killed us all.
Yeah, I was happy to take that.
Yeah, and that was because we were eager to get to this game, and this game was a Kickstarter, just like I think the previous Original Sin, and they reached their goal within 12 hours and raised $500,000. All of the stretch goals that were ever announced for this game were also achieved before they were actually announced what the goal rewards would be. This game itself raised $2 million from its Kickstarter audience, which is just fantastic. Now, one thing that this development team continued to do while they were making the game was to consult with those Kickstarters and ask them what they wanted in the game, and they helped shape the game that this actually is as well.
Yeah,
and that was also fantastic. And I also believe that the biggest Kickstarters of the game have their portraits.
Yeah, I think that
paintings,
was an incentive. They also
as one of the rewards, yeah.
They also submitted a photo of themselves, and then the art team turned it into a theme that befitted the game.
I just noticed those beds are in the most comedic of positions if you're on a boat. No, water just comes right through.
Yeah, I've never noticed that until now.
Right. I also think it's worth noting that, because I remember on the day of this game's release, do you remember what happened?
The power cut for
there was
the studio.
A power outage in Belgium, in the city that the development team was in. On the day of release of the game, the power went out for everyone.
Yeah,
so
they were scrambling to get it uploaded for people.
Yeah,
the full game.
Because at that point there wasn't early access available, which I didn't want to really partake in. I knew I was buying the game. I knew I was getting it day one, but I just didn't want to play the early access. I just wanted to experience it all on the day one. But you had the early access.
I did have the early access. It included the ship that I'm doing now and the Fort Joy area, but only the beginning part of it. You didn't really. It wasn't fully fleshed out like it was in the full game. There was a lot of balance changes made because of it, and to be honest, I'm glad it went into early access, because the game would be very different and probably very unbalanced in some of the combat abilities. I remember particularly the Ranger was incredibly OP. It had an ability that it could just spam, and also then all your abilities go on cooldown for various amount of turns. He had an ability which was just immediately make them available.
Wow.
And he was incredibly broken, and it needed to be sort of balanced. So it was a good thing in this instance with the early access. They really used the community's knowledge and feedback really well,
and actually made the changes that were needed.
Yes, they've consistently come back and tweaked the game, balanced it, supported it. Any issues, any bugs or anything have been fixed.
Yes.
Quite consistently. Anything else that's arisen or the community's noticed, they have consistently gone to fix and support this game.
So what do you think of the story for this one, jumping into this one after the last game?
I mean, I think it's your very typical story of you're the hero, you've been selected by magical forces, and you're a special person, and you have to go and sort of save the world. It's very similar, but it's got a twist. You've been selected by a god, one of the race's gods, to become a god woken, and you are then racing and challenging against other god woken to become the divinity after the death of the previous divinity, Lucian, who was from the previous games that Gary mentioned earlier. The other god woken can become your party members if you choose to use them, but towards the end of the game they will also then become your enemies, because they are competing, as I said, against you to become the divinity. You can convince them otherwise, but that's up to you and how you play your game if you are able to do that.
There are basically, I'm just seeing there's a portrait on the wall there now. But yeah, some of the NPCs, some of those other Godwoken, they will form your party, and you can have 3 party members travelling with you. And if you put enough points in, I guess, persuasion, or if you do lots of things throughout the campaign for those Godwoken that they like, you can gain reputation with them. You can also complete their characters' special story missions in the game, that they will also, and depending on the outcomes of the decisions that you make on those quests, that can also impact whether you can tell them, look, I'm going to be Godwoken, so will you promise to back down? So there are ways of doing that. But you can also play this game 2-player co-op, where each of you controls your own Godwoken and also has a party member with you, or if you wish, there is a lone wolf trait, which you can just play the game solo, as we've said, or you can 2-player co-op, just the 2 of you, and the lone wolf perk will still work. I believe there's also mods for the game where you can play 4-player multiplayer and all 4 of you play through the campaign. We know we did that for Divinity Original Sin. I don't know how well it works in Divinity Original Sin 2.
It's actually programmed to be in the game from the start, because one of the quite popular ones from the first game was, because it was a 4-player party, but you could only play realistically with 2 heroes. In this, you can play, if you choose 4 people, they will be 4 heroes,
not 2 heroes and 2 companions.
They supported that right from the start, because they saw how popular and it was wanted to be by the community.
Yes, and you can easily understand that. A good party is made up of a good amount of players, and especially if the chemistry is right between the players and the characters that they're playing and the stories that the game is telling, there is a lot of fun to be had there. because there's lots of dialogue trees with some of the characters. Also, depending on the race that you are, whether you're undead or not. And there's even special abilities that lets you turn monsters into chickens.
Yes, there is, Gary. Your favourite, isn't it?
Well, we'll get into that in a little bit. So, would you like to talk about the graphics and the artwork of the game?
Yes, it's. I love the graphics on this. It is sort of your more top-down style, computer RPG, pen and paper, where it's, from the top point of view, reminds me a lot of Baldur's Gate, but just much more graphically beautiful. I mean, my big benchmark in games is look at the water, and you can see how great it is, how well the surfaces are animated.
You can get in really close as well, can't you? You can move the camera in fairly close, and everything seems nicely textured. It's the game also has quite a few different environments that you'll go to. There'll be sandy areas, water areas, poisonous areas, dungeons, castles, buildings. There's a lot of environments to go to. All the lighting's changed, graphics, everything's just got. It's all consistent. And the first time I looked at Divinity, I wasn't too impressed graphically. But then the more I look at this game, I'm just like, wow, there's a nice bits of texture here. There's not that much clipping here. I just like the way that it's all built and designed. It's very good to look at, and it definitely feels like a Divinity game. The more you play it, the more you get into it, everything about the artwork, down to the character designs, the interiors, all of the different items. There's so many miscellaneous sort of decorations in all of the houses and rooms and characters. That it just brings the whole world of Larian Studios has created to life. And that is definitely accompanied with the sound and the music that's in the game. Now, I wanted to give special props to the composer. I'm just going to struggle with the name here for a second. And it's Barislav Slavov. And he is the new composer, first-time composer for a Divinity game, because the previous composer, Kirill Pokrovsky, passed away in 2015, who had done the music for all the previous Divinity games.
Oh, right, I didn't know that.
So, I thought the music in Divinity Original Sin was good. I think the music in Divinity Original Sin 2 is fantastic.
Yes, I absolutely agree. It is very well composed. They did a bunch of updates consistently with the Kickstarter campaign, and you could see the amount of effort and love that was going into this game. It was evident right from the start.
I always say in movies, that music and sound effects, especially music, makes up more than you are often aware of in film. For games, it's really no exception. If the soundtrack sucks, the game's gonna suck. It's really gonna pay for it. And so some people will. There was a reason why the Xbox 360 at one point let you play your own soundtracks, or even the original Xbox let you play your own music library that you had on there instead of the game's audio. And I remember when games used to let you choose your own audio sources.
Yes.
So this game having great audio really works. Now, so the music is fantastic. I love the music. Even when I'm sitting on the main menu of the game for a few minutes waiting for all my party members to get ready, I'm just listening to the music, and that just immediately, again, gets me in the mood to play.
I'm more than happy to listen to this soundtrack in the background all the time. It's
easy to listen to.
Most of the games I will put on a podcast or something, or a video for other things, but I am more than happy to sit and listen to this soundtrack rather than something else.
Yeah. And so the sound effects of the game, all great. All the characters have their own moans and grunts, and there's sound effects from all of the different sort of elemental effects that are getting fired off from burning, poison. Everything works. Now, one of the big things I really want to talk about as well with the sound is the fact that originally this game had no voices. There was going to be no dialogue.
No.
And because there are pages and pages and pages of dialogue trees.
Yes.
However, the studio, within a month of the game's release, managed to record all of the audio.
Every single line.
Every single line that was written from the game was recorded. It was just phenomenal. It was like, you couldn't do it. You can't do it. I don't actually know whether they managed to localize the audio and do it for multiple languages. But I think they definitely hit, obviously they hit the English one.
Yeah, I think they did localize it for a bunch of different languages. It wasn't all available right from the start.
That just makes it even more impressive.
But I think they went and added it in later. I know the major languages, or some of the major languages, you know, your English, your French, your Spanish, Chinese. Yeah. I think they were there from the start, but some of your less common were added and recorded later. Okay. But again, I don't speak those languages. I've never listened to them, so I can't say with absolute certainty, but I believe that is the case.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the gameplay. Let's talk about fighting and moving around the map. How does it work?
It's like your old school sort of turn-based combat. I mean, I'm a big RPGs. I was introduced to the world by Final Fantasies, so I love turn-based combat. And you've got an AP system, so every you can move so far for 1 AP. It's dictated by your stats how far you move, and you're given a certain amount of AP per turn. It regenerates the next turn. All your abilities cost AP, so you've got to manage all of that for that one character, your movement, your attacks, and everything. With your AP, and then obviously then the AI get to go. You can see at the top of the bar, not on this screen because we've got a cutscene at the moment. When you go in the combat, at the top of the bar there is the turn track order that you can see, so you know who's coming up next. So if you see an enemy that's coming up next and is going to be hitting hard, you can use some crowd control abilities. They're affected by physical and magical armor. In the first game, there was nothing to stop really. Shock status, being stunned, freezing them, setting them on fire. You could do that at will, and that's sort of what made the game easy. In this, they introduced an armor system. You have a physical armor and a magical armor, which are then used to resist status effects. And if you manage to remove all of their magical armor, then they become susceptible to being stunned, or you could petrify them, or if their physical armor's gone, you could set them on fire. It does become a big part of the game because that also applies to you as well.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just have to laugh at the amount of games that you play where at the very start you wash up on a beach with no equipment, no weapons.
I've still got my equipment. I've got my knives. I need nothing. I don't need anything else.
You've still got a few things, but you've still got that damn collar on.
I've got that damn collar on. That's part of the story in this, so I did skip the cutscene because it is quite lengthy. I would definitely recommend everyone to go and watch it. But you are a sorcerer. You have access to the source, which is essentially this game's version of magic, but it's not because you can use magic. It's sort of divine magic, and you can gain source. It's denoted by this little icon here. If I was to walk over source, I'd be able to absorb it and then use it for an attribute later. But while ever I've got this collar on, I am source muted. It's part of the story. We've gone to an island where all of the sorcerers are going, and they've been blocked off from accessing the source because when you use it, Voidwoken appear, which are these beautiful little creatures.
Yes, and so that is pretty much how the story goes, and it's quite a while, I believe it is, before you can get your collar off. But I also believe that there are multiple ways in which for you to be able to remove your collar and also get off this island of Fort Joy.
Absolutely, you can. There's multiple ways to complete your objective for everything in this game. So much to the point that after the fact, Larian Studios had to go in and support some of the ways that people were doing it. They didn't nerf it or block it or anything like that. It wasn't a case of, well, this is how we saw you do it, this is how you have to do it. They saw people were doing it other ways, and then it would bug out later, and they said, no, you do it how you want to do it. We will support you, and we will fix that and fix your game for you in that regards.
That is fantastic. That is absolutely amazing. That's something that Bethesda needs to pay attention to.
Let's not mention Bethesda.
I know you're a big fan.
We'll leave them out of this.
So let's talk about the difficulty of this game. Where do you find the difficulty in the game?
I haven't struggled with difficulty too much, but I am quite experienced with these style of games and tactics and stuff, so I have got a lot of previous knowledge. But for someone picking up for the first time, there will be a sort of steep learning curve, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. But never ever go into an encounter thinking, I've got this.
If you'd played Divinity Original Sin 2014, would you be able to pick this one up easier, or would it be easier just to go straight into this one?
I think, well, it would set the groundwork for how the AP system works. It's very similar, a little bit watered down and made easier because it got a little bit too ridiculous, the AP system in that. For the maximum you can have in this game is 6, unless you've taken a trait, which I've done, which is increases it by 2. In the previous game, you could have up to 14. You could basically buff up how much AP you did, and you had to do that towards the game to keep up with the massive amount of enemies they kept throwing at you.
So it's kind of a few steps backwards, but many steps forwards.
Yeah,
in its design. So it would throw you off a little bit, but once you got accustomed to it, I struggle now after playing Divinity Original Sin 2 so much to go back to the previous one, and it kind of just feels like that now doesn't feel as good as this one. In my opinion, I love the combat gameplay mechanics in this one.
I agree. I absolutely adore this game. I think it's a massive improvement on the previous one in almost every regards. The story's better, the gameplay's better, it looks better, it's way more balanced. It's just such a beautiful game. In terms of the difficulty, I mean, we've had a couple of encounters in the game that we've just gone, I didn't really anticipate that. Let's load it back in again and fight this encounter from a different strategic standpoint, and then it would work, and we would smash them to pieces. Definitely, I would. The biggest advice I would give, because I was in charge of this, is save often.
Often. Yes, it was your yeah.
Otherwise, you will lose a lot of time, because the amount of times you get ambushed when you're not ready. For example, I've been an idiot and forgot to heal up here.
You have no magical armor. You have physical armor, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just a single zombie.
But there is also, I believe, a selection of difficulties at the beginning of the game. But I think there is an adventurer difficulty, which is the easiest, which means less likely to be killed in combat, more about wandering around, finding stuff, talking to people, and completing story quests.
Yeah, it's your typical what seems to be added on most games of you just want to be here for the story. You don't want to go
strategically.
You don't want to be challenged.
Yeah. You just want some story and to see the fights played out where you really are just going to smash everything.
Correct.
But then obviously the difficulties after that just continue to increase the difficulty of the monsters. The harder difficulty basically means the monsters will use all the tricks in the book to defeat you.
Yeah.
And then the difficulty after that is if you die or your entire party is dead, it erases your save.
Yes.
And I don't think I would ever really play that mode in this game. Maybe if I had completed all the way through on its hardest mode and never party wiped, maybe. But other than that,
we'll talk about that later.
maybe. It would take some time. So the next thing that I really want to talk about this game, and this is one of the massive biggest selling points for this game, and it's the reason why I'm still playing this game and will continue to still play this game throughout 2018 until something better comes along, like Divinity Original Sin 3. There is no other way I can see myself being budged off of this game because of this game's DM mode.
Yes.
Dungeon Master mode basically enables one player to create an entire Dungeons and Dragons style pen and paper experience for up to 4 more players. So 5 of you will play a DM mode campaign that has been scripted and shaped and molded in advance. Now, as the game is also being played by the heroes while the DM is running a game, the DM can do a variety of things on the fly, such as adding items, equipment, interacting, using the NPCs. Granted, I've put in over 100 hours into building campaign stuff in DM mode and about 100 hours playing DM mode, campaign mode. From my save point, it's at about 180 hours. So that includes building and gameplay mode.
Right, okay.
So, and that's a lot of time.
Yes.
And that's not even scratching the surface of how much time will go into that mode. Granted, playing it and doing all that, I found all the limitations that it has to offer, considering that only about 2/3, it feels like 2/3, even maybe a third of the items and monsters and things that are in this single player game are not in the DM mode. The player base, the community for the game, has modded the DM mode extensively. I'm at the point now where I'm finishing a DM campaign and I'm going to build Act 2 of that campaign with all of the mods. Once I then get all the players to get those mods, and I will transfer those characters and some of those items over somehow into a new campaign. But essentially, it's endless hours of fun and creativity.
Yes.
A lot of the maps, like, it is limited in terms of the fact that you have much smaller areas of exploration. You can't have 4 people turn up and then go wandering off these massive, expansive maps. They're very small, condensed, interactive tiles, if you will, where the story or the fight encounter happens on this tile. Once the players all decide to move on, you will manually load in the next tile.
Yes.
So I've absolutely loved DMing characters, monsters, scenarios, encounters, shaping story, hiding flavor text and hidden items and areas, and interacting with the players. It's been really good. It is not the replacement for actual tabletop D&D experience, but it is something to do in addition to having that D&D experience where you can't always all get together at the same location and play.
Yes.
This is a good answer for it.
It could be a replacement, but would need a lot of love and attention from Larian. I know I sang the praises that they have, patched the game and supported an awful lot. They have not done so much with the DM mode, which I'm fine with. I'd rather them work on their campaign, because the DM is sort of more of an afterthought to be supported afterwards. But it does need a little bit of love and attention in regards to some aspects. It is certainly can be buggy. People can lose turns, can lose action points, which are denoted down below, which you'll see in my next turn here. Oh, I'm about to die. Yeah, this is my action points, and most basic actions take 2 AP to attack, or some of the abilities take 2. What do I want to do here?
Don't have any healing potions. Do you have any attacks that can restore vitality, or...?
What we can do is... Run away. Never be scared to run away, ladies and gentlemen.
Never be scared. Oh, he had an attack of opportunity.
I only did that to show exactly what was happening.
Oh, of course. So yeah, I absolutely adore the DM mode. I want to keep coming back to it. I know, like we said, Larian are working on the main campaign, which is great. The modding community keeps adding to it, and the modders, for the most part, keep updating the mods because there are stability issues there as well. Now, there is another way that you can do the DM mode, and that is to get the game editor tool, in which case then you can completely redesign and build environments for the game and export them or import them then into the DM mode. From what I've gathered, that is a lot more complicated and a lot more, time restraining, and I don't have the time to to really get down there to be able to build DM campaigns fully. But what you can do is download other players' custom created DM modes for those players that do have the time and the passion to build DM campaigns. They can and upload them. Other players can download them and DM them for their parties. So it's a fantastic mode. It comes with the game. For me, it's just the best bonus content DLC that I could ask for.
Yeah, the mods. There's plenty of mods available currently now. They've the community's added classes, quality of life changes to the game,
extra abilities and
skills. Because the first game was heavily modded, and Larian supported those modders, and they reached out in this game to them, used the community, and in some cases hired them to make products for the second game. They saw that people wanted the 4-player
co-op
option to make it, so that they've added this into the game. So they've definitely seen and will work with the modding community. It has become a massive part of it, and they know that. So I love this game. I cannot recommend this game anymore. Last year it was my game of the year. For
sure, yeah. I voted for it on the Steam
awards. I also did.
And I think I voted for it for the most heartfelt, what do you call it? The most passionate project as a developer, because of the amount of detail that they put into the game, the amount of variety, the interactivity, replayability, the creativity. It just deserved recognition for
Yes.
I felt. And I think this, I mean, the game was a fantastic success. It sold over 1 million copies in 2 months.
Yes.
So, you know, it's there was definitely an audience there for it, as we saw with the Kickstarter just exceeding expectations. There's a massive Divinity crowd out there, but it was I just didn't realize it. I didn't realize they were there until obviously playing the last 2 original Sin games. But I still reckon there's more people that need to be made aware of this series of games and what they're probably missing out on. Because even if you're not a fan of this game style, Divinity Original Sin will make you a fan of this game style. It's that good. On Metacritic, it has a 93 out of 100. IGN gave it a 9.6 out of 10. GameSpot a 10 out of 10. Destructoid a 9 out of 10. It was only Polygon Magazine, which actually was the lowest score I've seen. They gave it a 7 out of 10. Now, for me, 7 out of 10s are still way better than average, you know. Anything above 7 out of 10 is exceptional.
Yes.
All of these 9s, near 10s, tells you that this is next to a perfect game. I don't know how much more praise you can heap upon a game than that. Other than I'm going to continue playing this game all year long, and probably into 2019 until we see a Divinity Original Sin 3 or something else from this development team.
I will continue playing this while ever you continue GMing for us.
Excellent. And so long as the modders keep doing the work for me as well, creating new environments and monsters and things, this game will just continue to go. So yeah. With that, I just want to say thanks for watching, everyone. We'll be back next Friday looking at another video game. Of course, film reviews on Thursdays. You find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Patreon. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.
Bye-bye.